Welcome, Juventini, to the All Juvecast channel. And it's bright and early here. We're live at 5 a.m. over here in Pacific Standard Time Zone. And I've got a Juventino joining me today, Georg, coming from Malta. And look, we already got Alex joining us live. Ciao, Alex. Thanks for jumping on. Let's go. Yeah, we're ready to go. We're ready to go. But before we, look at this. Ken from Costa Rica as well, already joining in. Ciao, everybody. Thanks for being here. Georg is joining me from Malta, as I said. And real quick, I'd love for Georg, for you to tell us a bit about yourself, how you became a Juventino, if you don't mind. And then we'll start getting into all the good stuff we have as we preview Juventus versus Roma today, which is going to be a big, big match. So, Georg, thanks again for joining me, and it's great to meet you. And share your story, if you don't mind. Why Juventus for you?
So, firstly, thanks for having me on the show. Um, uh, I come from the island of Malta, which is very close to Italy. It is safe to say that Juventus is the most supported club here in an island of less than 500,000 people. There are around four official clubs recognized by Juventus with various branches around the island. So it is a normal thing here to be Juventino. So there's that. I followed football all my life. Since I was three, I remember the Champions League final we had against Milan. Bleak memories there, and I was always in awe of the great players we used to have, the Nedveds, the Del Pieros, Buffons. And we did go through a rough patch after the Calciopoli scandal, and that was a rough patch. It was difficult to go through, but it made me love Juventus even more. Then. And that we got the reward at the end. We got the Scudetto, which makes every title that much better. So. Uh, I have a family who supports Juventus as well, so there was that influence there. So, and I've been to my first match a couple of years ago against Inter, ironically enough, and I was with my father and my uncle. So that's basically it. I love Juventus. Juventus is basically my religion. When people ask me, "What do you believe in?" I tell them I believe in Juventus. It's a marriage that will last a lifetime, and through its good and bad, I wouldn't want it any other way, really.
That's beautiful, man. That's beautiful. That's great. So yeah, and the support's huge for Juventus from Malta. You're saying, so
Yes.
that's fantastic. That's great to hear. But yeah, that's great. So for those of you tuning in and checking this out, Georg has been heavily involved in viewing these lives and always has great insight in the matches. And I reached out and extended an invitation for Georg to come in and join on one of the post-match podcasts or one of these lives. So if you're tuning in and you want to take part and you want to jump on and share your opinions, feel free. The pre-match lives and the podcasts are always open to any and all Juventini. So thank you, Georg, for accepting the invitation. Let's get into it. Let's have some fun. So we're going to kick this off. We're not going to dive immediately into Juventus versus Roma. We're going to talk about some of the outside topics before we get straight into the projected lineups and everything like that. We're going to start off with McKennie. McKennie this week being labeled as untouchable in terms of the midfield by Pirlo and whatnot. And first of all, everybody that's in here live and whatnot, get your thoughts, get some quick feelings and comments towards McKennie. I think this is a no-brainer. It's something many Juventini have felt for a while now. The difference in the midfield when McKennie isn't involved as opposed to when he is night and day. There's a big difference. This guy, I've said it for a while, it's not that he's necessarily a master in any one area, but he's good and solid in multiple areas. He's well-rounded, and he's just a huge ball of energy as well. So he makes a big difference. And he's got a great ability to find the right space in between the lines from the midfield to the attack. He does it a lot differently in contrast to how Ramsey plays the role. And McKennie's been a huge addition. So for me, this has been a no-brainer for McKennie being untouchable. The other one is, who's the next untouchable in that midfield? Because Arthur seems to be that guy for many. So, Georg, I want to get your thoughts on McKennie, and then your thoughts on Arthur as well.
I think their situations contrast each other very well. With McKennie, you had a player who just inserted himself in the team, and we now have the famous McKennie role, which we refer to. And I think with Arthur, there was a gradual process of adapting, and sometimes as fans, we do get away with our enthusiasm when we sign a new player, and we start going for reasons as to why he's not playing or performing as well as we think he's going to perform. We blame Pirlo, or we're blaming things such as he's not good enough to play for Juventus, which are all false and rushing to conclusions, in my opinion. Because with Arthur, I think there are many factors that contributed to him not starting as well as we thought he would. He had his physical issues in the beginning, as Pirlo highlighted as well. He wasn't in his best physical form, and I don't think he understood his role very well. And I don't think, on the other hand, Pirlo really knew how to get the best out of Arthur at the beginning. So there were those factors which contributed to Arthur's slow start. And then I think Pirlo took a gamble on Arthur against Atalanta in December, where he got injured in the first half, so unlucky there. And then he took the gamble when he wanted something different against Napoli after the Inter game. And I think it paid dividend. And we've seen him against Bologna, a great little cameo against Inter themselves. I was convinced that the man just applies glue to the shin pads because the ball just sticks to his feet. He's such a nuisance to play against, really. And there was one particular moment which stuck out to me. There was one moment where he got the ball and he was surrounded by three Inter players. And he managed to dribble around them, and he drew the foul without losing the ball. So that speaks volumes about Arthur's confidence and his gradual improvement. And I do think that there is more to come from him. And with McKennie, I think he symbolizes really that it's not how much you spend, it's how you spend it. And I think he's a result of good scouting and a player that really fits the system. He symbolizes what Pirlo wants from his players. And I do believe that with McKennie, we always refer to the famous midfield of Pirlo, Marquisio, Vidal of a few years ago, and that really didn't cost much. Now, I'm not saying that every free transfer is going to work out as well as Pirlo and not going to spend money. I think we still need that referral point, whoever it is really. But we don't have to spend crazy amounts of money in the sense that for him to be a success with Juventus. I think McKennie symbolizes that very well.
Yeah. So this is an interesting one when we talk about Arthur McKennie, and it's already flashing up in our chat here. And Vishwajit just joining in. Ciao, Alberto and Georg. Ciao, Vishwajit. Thank you very much for joining us. So on the terms of McKennie and Arthur, we have some great stuff coming in here. So basically, Arthur for Alex here. Arthur for me is a must start whenever healthy. I remember checking him out at his first few matches, and at Barca I was really impressed and dreamed of getting him one day. The thing with Ken here saying in terms of Arthur, he might be better pushed up the pitch. As some are mentioning, Arthur, as Ken says, also lacks that defensive bite needed for that position, but we still like him a lot. So you have this situation where and I've questioned that, and I used to question this right before Pirlo Pirlo seemed to be set in with this Bentancur, Arthur, McKennie midfield. I said I see some defensive issues if Bentancur and Arthur are out there at the same time. But honestly, over the past little bit, it seems to have solidified a bit. They still have this issue in picking up the trailer, that trailing run amongst our midfielders. But it's a tough one, in terms of, do we slide Arthur a bit higher up the pitch? So we saw reports of this come out, and Pirlo kind of spoke to a bit and saying Arthur actually likes to slide up and be a bit higher. We did see this transition where Bentancur started to be the one in behind. Bentancur also is capable of going further up, but I think, and this is it, we haven't seen enough yet to say who's going to be better at the final third between Bentancur and Arthur. We haven't seen enough yet. We know Bentancur is hit and miss when he gets to that final third and he gets high enough up there. So it's kind of a tough one. Arthur, I haven't seen him enough in that scenario where he's higher up there. But if there was a gun to my head and I had to make a decision right now, I would pick Arthur over Bentancur as being the one higher up. You talked about Arthur. He's got incredible confidence, especially with the ball at his feet. I remember this play against Merda there where he was caught on the sideline, and I said he's got nowhere to go. And he made his way out and slipped a pass out and then drew the foul, and it was unbelievable. And I said, man, there's not probably any other guy, I think, on our pitch, like in the midfield, that comes out of that scenario the way he did. So he's an incredible talent. In terms of playing him higher up and what we sacrifice defensively, I think you're going to have to make a sacrifice no matter who you put out on the pitch. To be honest, you have to take the good with the bad. But Arthur, in terms of what he does with possession, is huge for us because it contributes to our defensive game in terms of he's that escape. He's that escape from pressure. He's that escape from danger. He's kind of that safety net that can help out all the guys, especially the younger guys at the back. So if we get into a matchup where we have to play Meri Demiral or something like that, this guy is not great with the ball. But if you have that safety net there, he can quickly get it to Arthur, and Arthur will relax in possession and be able to give us that escape, and then we can find our shape. So Arthur's huge for me, and having them in there. Those two are locks. What we've got projected today, we'll talk about. It's going to be slightly different, but Arthur's been great. It took him a while to kind of integrate, but it did for everybody, because we saw an interesting stat line here, and we're going to get everybody's thoughts on this. It's pretty wild. Until you see it in front of you and you read this, you don't actually understand just how crazy this is. But in 29 matches so far, okay, Pirlo has had 29 different lineups, 31 players used so far, and he's had 25 different starters only in the month of January. That's pretty wild. That's pretty wild stuff when you read about. Georg, what are your thoughts so far on this Pirlo project and how he's been doing and whatnot?
I like what Pirlo is trying to do. I can see the progress from where we left back in September. The progress is there, so it's encouraging to see. Sometimes results haven't gone our way. I'm more concerned about the dropped points against the lower teams rather than the higher end, because I think we find ourselves in this position not because we lost to Fiorentina or Inter, but to drop points against Benevento, Verona, and those teams. And the Verona game worries me at the end of the month most, really. They're a nuisance to play against. Everybody hates playing against them. And I think rotation is key this year, because obviously it's an interesting stat, but when we really delve into it, with the condensed schedule that we have this year, we saw January and February is even worse. I think rotation is key, and when you look at Juventus and the depth that they have, and having to play everyone, I think it's a normal step when you look at it, given the number of players that Juventus can slot in the first team.
Yeah. In terms of the continuity, the chemistry, and continuing to build that, do you think so much rotation and all of this, do you think it's like, where do you stand on it? Do you think it's helped us find what we seem to have now as a solid base quicker, or do you think it's actually slowed down the progress in terms of where we could have been had he kept it more of the same and made slightly less changes
I
throughout?
think it had to be done because of the schedule, but seeing continuity now, in league games especially, seeing continuity and consistency in selection, as we said, Bentancur, Arthur, and McKennie, along with Quadrado and Chiesa, I think it helps build the chemistry and help the players understand better what is required of them in this new system.
Hmm. Yeah. And I mean, I think now, so, when we were kind of kicking off with Pirlo, there was a lot of changes. Everybody called him, it was too much tinkering and everything. And there was a lot, and it was hard to see any type of chemistry or understanding amongst the players for quite some time. So I have mixed feelings on if we would have been better to keep it more similar and make slightly less changes and try to integrate just until they got the system down, because that was a big thing too. Is it was completely different than anything they've done. It was no straightforward, this is your lineup, this is how we play, go. It was that transition into this 3-4-1-2, 3-5-2, 4-4-2 hybrid thing that Pirlo's got going on. So I think when you're trying to do both, which is mix in these players and also try to figure out this system, I think it may have slowed things down just a bit. And I think, you talk about these draws that we had against these earlier sides and whatnot. Honestly, like, some of these matches we've had as of late make me feel like this wouldn't have gone that way earlier in the season. You know what I mean? This last particular match against the Merda in the Coppa Italia, we pretty much sat back almost the entire second half. And I can't help but think in the first half of the season, we maybe don't end up pulling that out, right? So they're starting to come together in terms of how solid they are. I still would have liked to see more balance. This brings us to our next question. Something that we both wanted to discuss, which is, and real quick, I'm going to give a shout out to Colin and Antonio who are joining us. Ciao, guys. Thank you very much for making the live here. We're just about to get into grading the transfer window, okay, and putting a grade on it for Juventus. And the reason I wanted to talk about this in terms of balance of play and everything, while Kulishevsky did a solid job in slowing down Brozovic against the Merda, he was virtually almost invisible in terms of offensive contribution and what he could really do. And we saw he had opportunities on counterattacks that fell by the wayside against Merda, but it can't help but bring up the question as we try to grade a transfer window. Even if the name wasn't somebody many Juventini were excited about, like say Scamacca or whatnot, did we drop the ball in not getting another number 9? Like a true 9 forward? Because for me, the difference has always been there, steady throughout the season, if Morata is in the lineup versus Morata being out of the lineup. And I see it regardless of how Morata plays or how his individual performance is. I see what it means to the team as far as a focal point and everything. And I can't help but ask that question. Did we maybe make an error on not picking up a 9? So I want to get your thoughts. I want to get everybody's thoughts in the chats here as well. But Georg, what do you think about that?
If I had to give a rating to the January transfer window, I'd give it a 7. To start with the positives, I think we had some good sales. it generated good plusvalenza for the budget. We got rid of Kadira. We loaned Rugani out to Italy, which I think will suit him more. I think he's at his level now at Cagliari. He never really made a step up to Juventus from Brescia, and at Brescia he did really well. I think there could be a potential buyer there, obviously, if Cagliari survive the drop or other teams around that area. With Scamaccia, I will reserve my judgment because I haven't really seen much of him. But in terms of what I predicted at the start of the January transfer window, I thought we would have gone with Scamaccia with an option to buy and then probably go for Milik for next season. But that didn't work out because Milik obviously went to Marseille.
Yeah.
I think Dybala coming back will help. I do think I agree with you that Morata links better with Ronaldo, and in the general system he fits better than Dybala as of now. I think Dybala was improving before his injury. He was fitting into the system more. I think he struggles when he drops back too much. And under Sarri, we saw him stay forward more. And if Sarri taught us anything last season with all his bad points, I think he taught us that Dybala and Ronaldo could play together, as opposed to the prior season where we thought that Dybala and Ronaldo couldn't play together. So from that aspect, I think that will be a plus. With regards to Kulusevski, I think he originally was signed to play at the right wing, not up front directly. I think it's a learning curve for him. I still think his decision making is a bit off. I think he needs to improve in that regard. Will he improve on it? I don't know. I don't think it's his natural position, really. It will make do to the end of the season. Having four strikers, I think, is sufficient enough for now. If Kulusevski is going to be regarded as the fourth striker, it will be sufficient till the end of the season. But maybe for next season, we could think of getting somebody else in that position.
Yeah, absolutely. So Vishwajit coming in here was saying we could have brought in a creative mid in the January window, and this just really becomes the how you look at everything, right? So for me, when I look at this club, and I said this before, I see Kulusevski more as that creative mid. And for me, the number 9 would have been a big acquisition and coverage for us. Even Colin coming in here saying if Morata gets injured, we could be in a situation for real because the number 9 is such an important role for us. And it's true. Now we talk about Dybala possibly coming back, how that's going to shape up for the team as well. And for me, it's still the same. Like when I look at these guys on the outside that could possibly play up top, Ronaldo's not going anywhere. Ronaldo's always going to occupy that one forward position. So whenever you play Kulusevski or you play Dybala and you play them up top there, it changes the whole dynamic up top there. You just don't have anybody that plays it the way Morata does, that knows how to create the space for the other guys, that knows how to be that focal point. The other thing is nobody that could play like Morata with his back to goal. So Kulusevski consistently dispossessed with his back to goal. Dybala, not physical enough to do it as regularly as would be required that a number 9 would do it and whatnot. So it's just you lose that element. Aerial threat, you lose aerial threats if you have Kulusevski, Dybala in there. Morata still gives you that. Cristiano Ronaldo will always be that there, but we know how Cristiano likes to play, and he likes slotting out of there and playing from wide, coming his way in. So there's an element there that you could argue. In terms of grading the transfer window, my prediction, what I thought was going to happen from the get-go was we were going to have one player that would actually participate in the lineup. And the rest were going to be some of these younger prospects and bargaining chips and maybe future players for Juve. But I think they did well to pull out close to 29 million euro in those moves while securing the guy they wanted, which was Rovella. It was a good window for sure. I think your 7 is probably right there, maybe 7.5 because it was more money than I anticipated.
And we have to be realistic about who we can sign in January, because the January window isn't really renowned for signing big players. Nobody is willing to sell
Yeah.
their key players in the January transfer window mid-season.
You're absolutely right on that too. So um, look at this, Lewis coming in here saying, "Hey, Georg, congrats on the debut." There
Thanks.
you go, and doing very well. But might I add, he's always got great insights in the chats. Pulled him in. I know he was a little bit nervous about this one, but you're doing fantastic, Georg. And then Antonio coming in here. Big shout out to Striped Hearts Apparel. Ordered some merchandise, and I was impressed in the service and quality. Hey, thanks for the shout out, Antonio. I'm glad you liked everything. Obviously, everybody, you can see the website in the corner of the screen there. We got some new designs coming out too. So thank you for the support. Much appreciated, Antonio. Let's keep going with the discussion on Kulishevsky and Dybala. It's more about Dybala. How do we fit Dybala in here? So let's see what Alex has to say. Dybala can do it, but he needs to stay up top. He can't roam like he wants. Yes, he could do it. He has to stay up there, and then that becomes it ultimately becomes the same with all of our players, really. They need to trust our midfielders to do their job. So essentially, whether you have Ramsey or you have McKennie in there, the forwards are going to have to start trusting these guys that they're going to get the ball up the pitch and actually link up the play for them the way it's required. But the number 9 still, if these guys are up there, I can't help but say that these number 9s need to be we just need a 9 in this setup. It's if you look at this setup historically, even like if he's trying to mimic somewhat the days when Conte was around, if you look at his new setup with Merda or whatnot, that role is critical. And you can see it. You could see the big difference from one match to the next, even from us against those guys when they had Lukaku in the lineup and when they didn't. It makes a big difference having that target guy, right? Colin comes in here with a question for us. Do you think Chiesa can do a better job at second striker compared to Kulishevsky in a game where we need more defensive fullbacks, say a game where you go with Sandro or Panita there? That's a really good question, actually. Man, let's start to dissect this one. So Chiesa, I think if we think back in terms of matches, we only saw him slide into a more central role supporting forwards once. It might have been against Milan when Pirlo made that adjustment. We know how Chiesa did in terms of that. What do you think, Georg? Do you think Chiesa could do better than Kulishevsky as that second role? And for me, I think I see him as that blazing player that needs a little bit more space than maybe being up and tight there as second striker. I haven't seen enough of him up there, so I kind of got some question marks. But what do you think?
It's an interesting hypothesis when you think about it, but I think I agree with you when we say that Chiesa is that bursting player that needs space to roam into, and I don't think he'll get that as second striker. I mean, we saw bits of him against Milan, and I think against Inter in the Coppa Italia, and or was it against Genoa? I'm not sure. He played as a second striker against Spal. Sorry, he came on as a second striker. It's an interesting one, really, because it obviously depends on the dynamics of the game and the opposition we're facing. Maybe in a more open game where the opponent is attacking us more and they're not just flat 11 at the back, it could uh, be an interesting experiment to try out. But as of right now, from what I've seen so far, I don't think it's his ideal position.
Yeah. Yeah, I tend to agree, and it's a tough one, and it is interesting. And even looking at the comments here, you got Ken right away, yes, on Chiesa as second striker. Then you have Alex saying we would be wasting Freddie's potential that way, in his opinion. So yeah, it's a tough one. I think you would have to see it more, but I think he does his damage attacking space, being in space to either make that decision if he wants to cut inside or go down the byline. I just think he needs that more. I don't know if he's gonna be as effective in tight, close proximity to those defenders and whatnot. So yeah, it'd be interesting. Big shout out to my man Rocco. Rocco was the one of the first guests ever on the All Uvcast podcast. Great friend. Keep it up, boys, and stay in love, striped hearts. Thanks, Rocco. Much appreciation. The problem with Dybala is that he comes too deep. So the interesting thing with Dybala is that our other guys actually do quite a bit of the same thing. So Ronaldo roams. We know this. Kulishevsky was dropping quite a bit, and this is where we bring up the question: were we better off to bring in another number 9, no matter who the name was, just to have somebody that plays the role? Because I see it even in Kulishevsky. I see Kulishevsky doing the same things and dropping in there and whatnot. So I don't know. I don't know if it's systemic or whatnot, but yeah, it's a tough one. It's a tough one. Eric saying on Dybala, he's going to sit this one out. Yeah, Eric had himself a bit of a stalker after his Dybala comments the last time. He wasn't even a guest. He was just chatting in the chat. So I understand, my man. I understand. It was tough. It's tough. AJ's coming in here saying, I don't know when was the last time a non-striker did well at striker at Juventus. It always has to be an actual striker for it to work. Otherwise, we are making some compromise. Yes. And really, you can talk about compromise being made even just around the pitch for Juventus, Quadrado was never a right back. I mean, he had played a bit here and there, but he was a right winger,
We had Mandzukic was never a right winger, left winger, and then he turned out to be a gem in that position.
So, yeah, so it's like all of a sudden, now he's right back, but there's a compromise and there is sacrifice being made there. There is a compromise there.
I think it depends.
You take the good with the bad. Pjanic came to us, as one of those guys to start replacing the midfielders we had going out, but he was an attacking mid that we were going to, again, compromise with to make a regista or whatnot. And then it just seems to happen all over the pitch. And it's a tough one, but it feels like we go through it every year, that there's these compromises we're making at certain positions and guys are filling in, they're doing well. Danilo this season has been a revelation compared to what we got before. And everybody was absolutely petrified at seeing him at center back when Pirlo, it was originally listed in the early training sessions, Pirlo's trying Danilo at center back, thinking, Jesus, what is going on here? But for me, all in all, the project's very, very well. In terms of these strikers, I still feel the go-to Morata and Cristiano. You have to have that true 9 in the setup for me. And so far with what I've seen out of Kulishevsky, I still have more faith in having Morata in that lineup. If Dybala comes back, honestly, unless Dybala hits the ground running and it's like absolutely insane, I don't see it changing. What about you, Georg? Is it still Morata, Ronaldo all the way?
Yes, it's still Morata and Ronaldo. Dybala offers something different than Morata, and you have to adjust according to the opposition as well. It depends the opponent as well. So there's many factors to factor in who to pick. My go-to would be Morata and Ronaldo. I think they complement each other very well. But it's a tough one, really, and it depends also what you were saying, the versatility of the player, his ability to adapt to a new position. So there's that as well. We saw Mandzukic, for example, do it very well when he did it. Azamo also ended up doing a shift at left back when he was with us. So it's really depends on the individual and his ability to be versatile and adapt to new positions. So I think there are many factors to consider when seeing who plays where on the pitch.
Absolutely. Keeping it with certain players here, we wanted to talk about this scenario because I saw a lot of fans kind of mixed feelings on this whole thing in terms of something which I actually find ridiculous, which is Buffon and the swearing and fining and banning. So Buffon risked suspension. This is a funny one. For me, it's really ridiculous because it happens in all sports. It's the in terms of context as well. He had just allowed a goal. He's not saying it necessarily at anybody. He's just upset, as you would be. We just watched a scenario between Lukaku and Ibrahimovic that was outrageous in terms of the difference between what Buffon actually did and what these two guys were doing. And to even discuss Buffon not being able to play a match because of this is ridiculous in my opinion. But I did see a lot of fans saying Buffon should have known better after it happening one time and now doing this. But to me, it's nonsense. It's complete nonsense to even be able to face a ban, even fining. Okay, if you're going to fine, that's one thing. But then you're going to be fining players every single game all across the league because it happens all the time. What are your thoughts on this whole scenario here? And I want to get everybody in the chat too talking about this.
I think it's silly that we're even discussing it. I mean,
Yeah.
swearing just happens naturally, really. If we had to get a fine every time we swear at work, I think we'd end up with no pay. So, one of the advantages, if you can call it that, of not having fans, and I don't want to be misunderstood, I do miss having fans in the stadium. One of the advantages is that you can hear the communication in a professional football match between the players themselves, the managers and the players. So you've got the real aspect. You can have a more in-depth look at the real game. And it's ridiculous, really, because frustration is just a natural reaction of a person.
Absolutely.
And everyone reacts differently. For some, it could be stomping their feet, and for others, it could be swearing. So we are just nitpicking human elements of the game, and we speak about how VAR is ruining football because it's removing the human aspects of the game, really. And we're nitpicking this because of something that Buffon said after allowing a goal, which he could have saved, obviously. And if we're really going to nitpick at this stuff, we should just have robots play instead of humans. So.
Yeah, pretty much, man. Pretty much. I tend to agree. Alex coming in here with this is peak Serie A laughing. Antonio with can't believe we were talking about Buffon being suspended when Ibra and Lukaku said much worse. Much worse. Vishwajit, Ibra and Lukaku was one for the books. Absolutely. And then Ken coming in here with it looks like another classic case of an attempt to build unnecessary Italian drama. Yeah, you never really know. And Buffon is the man. Absolutely. I summed this up in a tweet actually of how I felt in terms of how ridiculous it was. If everybody remembers back to when Serie A put out their "Say No to Racism" campaign, they had put these posters that an artist had painted, and it had monkeys on it. And this was their "Say No to Racism" poster. And I understand what the artist was trying to achieve, but there has to be that human element in editing that you look at this and say this is a racism no to racism campaign poster, and you have monkeys on the actual poster. Okay. So to me, my tweet was very simple. I put up this poster, said, okay, this is our no to racism campaign. Serie A responds with, awesome. Let's fire these out everywhere. What? The next one, Buffon swearing during the match. Unacceptable. fine him, and ban him. This is the level. This is what you get with Serie A in terms of how ridiculous it is when it comes to these scenarios, these situations. And not only that, but when you look at incidents within the league, the punishments never seem to be consistent. Never seem to make a whole lot of sense as the whole, where you see certain guys getting punished more for less usually. And it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy to see. Antonio's saying he's currently watching Arsenal and Aston Villa. And believe you me, the language is very colorful, he says. Yeah. Like I say, happens in every sport right across the world. So we're all in agreement on the Buffon situation. This one is interesting. Okay, so Cristiano Ronaldo celebrating his 36th birthday yesterday, and talks amongst fans on extending Ronaldo's contract, even for 1 year. This is an interesting one. Everybody that's joining us, get your answers in here now. If you feel, yes, it's a no-brainer, we need to extend Cristiano Ronaldo even for a year. And if you feel otherwise, let's talk about it. But Georg, I'm going to let you kick this one off on how you feel in terms of extending Cristiano Ronaldo at the age of 36.
Look, I hear lots of debates and people, I disagree with it that Juventus are dependent on Ronaldo. I view Ronaldo with the concept of opportunity cost. For those not aware what opportunity cost is, you give up an object to gain another object and vice versa. I think Juventus on the field are sacrificing, they are adjusting their style to fit Ronaldo. I mean, you've got the best goal scorer in history, and you fit your style of play to accommodate him, which is fine, totally fine. And off the field, you've got the obvious financial uh, issue with his wage, 30 million a year, and you've also got him helping with the growing of the brand, Juventus brand. And we know how Agnelli views the importance of marketing, which I agree with him as well. So we sometimes view that 30 million wage as astronomical, and it sometimes obviously depletes other areas on the field which can be strengthened because of the financial reasons, more so now with the pandemic. I view this opportunity cost concept the same as I viewed the Higuain concept when he left Napoli. There were many people that were saying Napoli will now fall into the Europa League races. They did better without Higuain. They invested off the pitch, and on the pitch they adjusted their style to accommodate the players that they had. Now, in terms of another argument that pops up is that Real Madrid aren't as good as when Ronaldo was there, and I respond to that with three main issues why I don't agree with that argument. I think Real Madrid they won the La Liga last season, so there's that. But I think they're not as good as when Ronaldo was there because they didn't think ahead. I think that was a mixture of bad investments. We're talking, I don't want to scapegoat anyone, but Eden Hazard, for example, 100 million plus investment, which had more injuries than goal contributions. You've got an aging squad, so psychologically the motivation won't stay the same. And you've got a core of young players which tend to come with their inconsistencies as well. So I won't just blame the Ronaldo departure there. I think it'll be fine when Ronaldo leaves. To answer the question, I would extend Ronaldo by 1 year, but I would decrease the wage somewhat as to serve as a hypothetical insurance policy. He's not young anymore, he's 36. When his contract expires, he'll be 38 plus. So that difference in wage would serve as an insurance policy per se. So it covers in case, obviously, an injury happens. Or, I mean, he brags about having a body of a 20-year-old something, but father time catches up to everyone in the end. And I do think that if they were to extend his contract, he would have to take a wage cut.
Yeah, absolutely. So these are all great points you made on there, Georg. And here we go with C, senor. So very, very simple here. Alex saying 100% extend if the financials allow it. What an honor to have him retire in the black and white. Shwajit here with, well, it's a no-brainer for the management, but it depends on Ronaldo if he wants to. And AJ coming in with, I think the decision to whether to extend or not should be made in 2022, not now. And then Alex saying, I think arguing against Ronaldo is just people trying to be edgy, in my opinion. And I don't get it. So here's the thing. I'm not trying to be edgy. I may be playing devil's advocate, but for me, no question, it could not be at the same wages. Absolutely not. It stretches us out. We've seen what it's done to our lineup. And honestly, like, we have to take a look at certain aspects. I mean, if McKennie, which was a very cheap loan, didn't hit the ground running, that could have been a different scenario in our midfield. Arthur's taken a while to adapt and whatnot, but we are running with a couple positions that we still need filled. So it stretches us out a bit in roster. Is it great having CR7? Absolutely. We're talking about, one of the GOATs. So it's absolutely, it's fantastic to have him around. But I think there is a discussion when you look at this team as a whole and you factor in its roster and you start thinking about players that we need to move or won't be able to move and be able to make any money on the outcome of their contracts and whatnot. So I don't think it's a clear as day. I think if we're talking about performances and what he does to the squad and whatnot, absolutely. It's a no-brainer. You keep Cristiano Ronaldo in terms of what he can do and what he brings and whatnot. But when you start looking at the team as a whole and what we're trying to avoid, and if we're spreading ourselves too thin, you have to ask the question, and I think it has to be made. And I think AJ brings up a really good point that the decision, we should wait on it, right? So it is what it is. Alex saying that all these other arguments beside finances are mute because he says, of course, it can't be at the cost of the club's stability. Exactly, but that's in where the argument lies here. So Antonio coming in here with, would love to see Haaland under CR7's wing for a year before he moves on. Of course, this is a dream, in my opinion, based on post-COVID finances. He won't stay at Dortmund for too long. It would be a dream to get Haaland. I was wanting us to get him so bad there when right before he went to Dortmund there. Haaland, I absolutely adore the kid. Now he plays. But CR7 in the extension, it's a tough one. I don't think it's if we just go on performances, it's an easy yes, but there are those contributing factors that everybody's mind works differently, and you brought up a great point, Georg, about Madrid and kind of what they were going through and whatnot. I do think Juve's shaped up much better than that position Madrid set themselves up for, because there's two completely different styles at play there, right? And Madrid was just, they make so much revenue wise that it's for them, it's nothing, right? And they're just buy. They do very well at selling too, because they're always in this position where if you remember back in that day, like, they had these players on their bench and they would be happy to sit on these players, right? Where other clubs would not do that. But now they're kind of feeling the effects of doing that and not taking little hits here and they're not necessarily hits, but just dropping that price down a bit in order to make a deal. They were always so cutthroat in dealings, and now it's caught up to them, really. Yeah, it is what it is. But honestly, it looks good on them. And even Merda's situation is looking pretty good. Not it's funny they had to put themselves in that situation just to try and compete with the rest of us. So I like it. Juve's done very, very well, and if anybody has criticisms overall in terms of management and Agnelli and stuff like that, and I do as well, we do have to look at that and look at these positions the other clubs in and really, really give credit where it's due that we're actually in a good situation, even considering all these scenarios of what's going on. So,
And I don't think it's far-fetched to answer the comment to get Haaland post Ronaldo. I don't see them being in the same squad at the same time. But if I had to make a wild prediction right here, right now, I think that Haaland will be a Juventus player in the future. So
yeah, and I saw that comment too. Like, we can't afford. I think in terms of the same team, I don't think we'll see it exactly like you said. But after, sure, you could see it. Let's get to the match today. Juventus versus Roma. This is the lineup projection. Okay. So we've got Szczesny in goal, Quadrado, Bonucci, Chiellini slated to start, Danilo in the middle, McKennie, Arthur, Rabiot, Chiesa, and then Morata, Ronaldo up top. Let's get everybody's thoughts in the chat here on the lineups, what you guys think. And for me, right out of the gate, I like the lineup. I really do. I think Morata, Ronaldo up top, Chiesa's in there, McKennie and Arthur are in there. At the back, you've got Chiellini in there, Danilo as well, and Quadrado's doing his thing. So for me, this is a good lineup. This is a solid lineup. It tells me one thing too, and I see the comment immediately. I would not play Bonucci, and I knew it was going to come. For me, I think it's clear what Pirlo is going to start to do, whether we agree with it or not. I think he's going to start spreading out Chiellini and De Ligt across the back line, and it's clear to me. I think that's what he sees. I think he sees the stability remaining with one of them having to be in the center of the defense at the back. Bonucci will play as one of those side center backs when we change into that, morph into that 3-4-1-2. And that gives us another element of attack, having Bonucci out to the side rather than opposed in the heart, because he can distribute those long balls if the opportunities present itself. So for me, he's splitting up Chiellini and De Ligt. Honestly, do I agree with it? I agree with it in terms of Chiellini cannot play every single match. De Ligt could go every match, but this gives you a good spread in a congested schedule. So I think it's a good call. Georg, what do you think about what he's doing there in terms of the center backs? What do you think of this particular lineup before we go further into the preview of the match? Go ahead.
So with all his defensive woes, I think Bonucci is still the best vertical passer in that back line. And I think we are facing a situation which was very uncommon this season, where we have 5 fit centre backs, including Dragozin as well. So I think it's a positive problem, if you can paint it that way, that Pirlo has 5 fit defenders in his disposition. And I think Pirlo goes through situation analysis when to put Chiellini in that side. I think he got right against Sampdoria. Chiellini made that goal-saving challenge on Quagliarella. He was pivotal in our win. I think that's what Pirlo is trying to do. He's trying to spread De Ligt and Chiellini. And I think that Bonucci fares much better playing next to Chiellini. And I think it's an underrated factor when we speak about the centre-back pairing. I think that having great chemistry between your centre-back pairings improves their performance significantly. We've seen great defenders struggle playing with, next to new players, and it takes time to adjust as a centre-back to play next to somebody new. And I think getting the best out of Bonucci requires Chiellini to be next to him. Now, will this always be the case? I don't think so. But I think Pirlo is going with his strengths right now, and in a tough period, I think the time for testing is now over. So
Yeah, that's a great point too. Is getting the best out of Bonucci. Vishwaji coming in, Bonucci looks a shadow of himself. Yes, we know that. But again, Bonucci's going to be a part of this lineup of this season. He kind of has to. We kind of need to use him as well too, just in terms of the amount of matches. If we can continue on in these other tournaments, whatnot. Bonucci. Again, I feel much, much better without him in the heart of the defense. If you have your Chiellini there, whatnot, even De Ligt, whatnot. When De Ligt was out, that was a tough one. That was a tough stretch for Bonucci, but you can see already a little bit of a turn when Chiellini is there. So I do feel okay with that. I think this is a good point. When Alex says, hope Rabiot steps up, and AJ says this match will show if Bentancur is essential to the midfield or not. So this is going to be something very, very interesting to watch. Should the projection line up the same in the match? Because obviously it's subject to change as we get closer to game time and whatnot. And you never really know with Pirlo what you can get. And the fact that Sky's wrong 95% of the time. So you factor in all those things. We could see some changes, but it is interesting to see. Rabiot is a guy that's he's kind of hit and miss, I guess you can say, right? Like, he had this stretch where the preseason when he first joined us last year, he was fantastic. The season started, he was really bad. And then at the end of the season, he was really good. And then he hit the season kind of so-so, had a really good stretch, kind of dipped off. And now he's had a couple decent showings, but he's kind of a player where some Juventini have labeled an enigma, where it's just like you just don't really know. Some Juventini just don't even know how to really put it in words. What Rabiot does, what he brings to the team, he's a physical guy. He can go box to box, but in terms of matches, I think there are some contributing factors. Like when I watched us play against the Merda there in that Coppa Italia, that left side was not very good in terms of Rabiot, Bernardeschi, and Sandro. And I saw a problem there. Just this zone where it was clunky. There was no chemistry between those three. There was no fluidity. And it was what I saw was one out of the three play well in waves. So there was a stretch where it was all just a mess. Then Bernardeschi had a couple decent instances, but the rest wasn't with them, wasn't together, wasn't on the same page. Then Rabiot kind of started to pick up. He started to do well, but same thing. Bernardeschi was off. They just weren't on the same page. And then we go back to those numbers. 29 matches, 29 different lineups, 31 starters all in the month of January, different starters. I think that kind of maybe played a factor in it as well, and it affects how you see these guys and how we rate them or whatnot. That left side though, that was really, really bad, and it was a sore spot. It was better than the one we saw before against them, where it was just Frabotta and Ramsey would help the attack, and it was literally Frabotta against Barella and Hakimi, which is ridiculous. But it was better in that terms defensively, but it's got to all fit, right? And in terms of Rabiot, what is your opinion of Adrien Rabiot, Georg?
I think Rabiot has a factor that's always looming on his head is that high wage that he's on to what he offers on the pitch. I do agree that I think the left side was poor against Inter. Alexandro is still yet to get a consistent run of games because of injury, COVID, and whatnot. And with regards to Rabiot, we've seen glimpses, and I understand why he started the season slowly last year because he had a season where he didn't play with PSG. So to regain that match sharpness, it takes time. We've seen glimpses last year of what he can do, but he just doesn't do it consistently enough for us. I think that's the problem with Rabiot this season. He's not consistent enough, and if a good offer comes in the summer, I'm not going to say to oppose it really. So
Yeah. Well, this is the thing too, though, is it's gotta all line up. Like you can see kind of how Rabiot plays and whatnot, but it's gotta fit together. AJ coming in here saying, "I know Rabiot played well at the end of last season, but let's not forget the results were abysmal. We actually did much better result-wise with Pjanic, Khedira, and Matuidi." But you can't put that on one player. You can't put the results being abysmal on Adrian Rabiot. You just can't, in my opinion. Okay. We saw him play very, very well. He's had matches in and out here, but I look at those matches. I look at kind of how did he perform well. He plays his role. It's just, is his role crucial to this particular setup and lineup? Not really. And yeah, if there was a move, if there was an offer, would you take it for Rabiot? Yeah, I think you'd have to be honest, because he's on that high wage, and you just, in terms of what he brings, could we replace? Well, we kind of did in a player that nobody even knew or heard of before he joined us, which was McKennie, for a lot less. So yeah, if I think Ramsey and Rabiot are always going to be those guys that came in on freeze that are on high wages. If something came in, it would be, for me, the payoff hasn't been there. Those guys haven't set themselves in this lineup where you have to say, yeah, we have to keep these guys. They haven't done that. But in terms of Rabiot and using him in the lineup and whatnot, I don't have problems seeing him in the lineup. He does this job of being box to box. He's big, he's physical, but we want this all-around guy out of him. We want the guy that's going to be shooting from range and scoring goals. Like, everybody wants the same midfielder. Everybody wants these guys, seeing them as this one player. Like, everybody's going to be everybody has to be Pogba in the midfield. Everybody has to be like Nicola Barella in the midfield or whatnot. It isn't. It's more of the combination and everything you have. So more so than attacking Rabiot, I would say we are missing a certain skill set and abilities in the middle. But I don't take that out on Rabiot. Rabiot kind of does his part. He can contribute. He's physical. He's good box to box. He's good on the ball for the most part too. Not as good as Arthur by any means, but I don't know if necessarily we're using him the best way. But unfortunately, that's the only way he could be used in this particular setup. So maybe that's just where it lies for Rabiot. Maybe that's as far as he's going to go with us. So for me, we're still missing one style of traits and abilities. It's not Rabiot's fault, but it's just that the way we're using him now, if he can't kind of break through, even if it is in terms of the other guys around him and just not gelling, it's not going to change. Like, that's the only spot he could play in this particular midfield. What do you think about kind of that, Georg? And do you agree? Do you disagree? Or
yeah, I agree completely with that, and I think some fans are sometimes hard on him because of that, because they expect Rabiot to be that all-rounder, and he's not that type of player in reality. And we sometimes mix up what we expect out of a player with what he's capable of offering. Now,
yeah,
I think that if the right offer comes in, what makes McKennie a success is how he fits into the system well. He fits the system very well, and that's why he's logged in into the starting 11, and that's maybe not the case with Rabiot, and I wouldn't particularly blame him. But if he's not going to fit into that system, we need someone who does.
yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of the thing, is just it's a tough one. Abdul coming in saying, do you think Rabiot's suited for Italian football? I think he's suited for Italian football. I mean, he's done well with the French national side as well. I think it's not the Italian game that's preventing him or whatnot. I think it's just, look, we have question marks about Rodrigo Bentancur. Okay, we have question marks about Ramsey. We have question marks about Rabiot. It is what it is. Again, I put it back to one spot that we need these set of traits and abilities. In my opinion, Bentancur and Arthur could rotate, but then you have McKennie. McKennie's kind of his standalone. He's a lock. But when you look in terms of outside of that, we need a little bit more depth in the midfield while also adding traits and abilities that we don't have, which is that creative presence. Always creative. You know, McKennie's good all around. He's a workhorse. Arthur solid in possession. Bentancur can be that kind of alternative to Arthur, or he could work with Arthur. But you still need that one creative guy, and you need a backup plan to Arthur, in my opinion. So that puts guys like, you know, the exact guys we've been linked with, you know, Locatelli, Awar, you know, DePaul, even though a lot of Juventini don't like him or not, there's a great creative guy out of the middle. So these are the kind of guys we're linked with. Fagioli, everybody's loving Fagioli. Yeah, he just needs time. He's not ready by any means. You know, let's try and get him as many minutes as we can. Hopefully we get a lot of comfortable leads where we can play Fagioli and get him in there. You know, I'd love for that, because that means we're doing some damage. But I think we're missing a set of traits there. So does that put Rabiot on the block? It puts Rabiot and Ramsey on the block, in my personal opinion. Yeah, we'll see what ends up happening in terms of this match. Everybody joining us, get your predictions in. We're going to have a little fun here. We're going to see how this one goes, okay? So in terms of prediction, if we think back to the first time Juventus faced Roma, it was a tough watch for Juventini, because they literally picked us apart, really. There's no other way to put it. It was very, very still new for Pirlo. It was our second match of the season. Okay, we came off a impressive 3-0 win against Sampdoria, and we were like watching some good ball, and we're like, holy smokes, did Pirlo just unlock everything in like one match, you know? And then we faced Roma, and we were very fortunate to end up in a 2-2 draw with Roma the first time around. But a lot, and I mean a lot, has changed. In terms of Roma, we're probably not going to see a whole bunch, but if we have changed there. But in terms of Juventus, when we faced them, it was Rabiot, Kulusevski, Ramsey, and McKennie across the middle. So huge difference, even just thinking about this one, because the setup was a straight 4-4-2. They did change it into this 3-4-1-2 or 3-5-2, but this was a lot of things that we know now were so bad, and Pirlo figured out and he would never do. McKennie would never play on that right wing. Okay, he was wasted. We've seen him in other matches as the season gone on, where he's out there and he kind of becomes lost. Doesn't work. Kulusevski and Rabiot in the heart of a midfield, you won't get that. You know, Ramsey as that other guy that's coming in as a link, you could see from time to time. But that match, we had Cuadrado on the left side, which we'll never probably see again. There was a couple matches where we had to use him, where he went in there and he was on that left side. So there's a big difference in the Juve of then to the Juve now. Big difference. Are we going to get picked apart like that in the middle? I don't think so. I don't think we'll get picked apart. Will Roma get opportunities and have opportunities to counter? Naturally, the way we play and shift in this hybrid setup creates that possibility. It's one of the trade-offs of how Pirlo wants to attack and how he wants to play. So it could happen. How do I feel this one's going to go? It's going to be a tough match. It's going to be a tight one. Are we going to get the clean sheet? We're on a little bit of a streak on clean sheets. Are we going to get one? It's tough with Roma. They've got good firepower. They got some a tricky player in Mkhitaryan. Dzeko can bang him in. It'll be a tough one. Tight match. I think Juve wins. I'm going to call 3-1 victory for Juventus in this particular one. Georg, I'd love to hear your thoughts in contrast from the first match to this one, and what you think, how you think this one's going to go, and what your prediction is.
I think, as we said, it's a learning curve for Pirlo as well. So it was, we can't forget that he didn't have a preseason to experiment. So his experiments needed to happen in the league games, and that may be one of the reasons why we dropped so many points early on in the season. Talking about Roma is interesting because I think now is the perfect time to play Roma, given the unrest that there seems to be in the Roma camp. They've got Smalling, who's injured. Kumbula will probably come in. He still hasn't settled in as people had hoped he would, and they've got the whole Dzeko issue because they stripped him of his captaincy. Pellegrini is suspended. Very good player. I like him a lot. So that will all aid Juventus on the pitch. I'm going for a 2-1 victory. I still think Roma will be a tricky opposition. They've got Mayoral, who's playing very well right now, Mkhitaryan as well, facing Spinazzola again. So it will be an interesting one, but an entertaining one as well. I'm going for a 2-1 victory for us.
Nice. There we go. 2-1. And of course, Alex coming in with the 2-0 call. Ken coming in with the 2-1 call. I'm going 3-1. You're going 2-1. We all see it the same. See Juve pulling this one out. I don't think they should be dropping this one. Of course, anything can happen, and that's why they play the games. But this will be a fun watch for sure, and it's a big one. And then we, of course, know what's on the horizon, which is the second leg of the Coppa Italia semifinal against Merda, that one back home in Turin. So yes, again, we continue on with these matches in quick succession, and it's going to be a crazy ride. And this month of February in general will tell us a lot about this team. So we thought that January was going to be the make or break, and we did very well. We only dropped that one match. Okay, so only 3 points dropped. But now February, very critical. Obviously, Coppa Italia semis against Merda, but Roma, and then Napoli after the second leg. And then the tricky ones. And you talked about a team that nobody really wants to play, which is Verona, is going to be a tough one. A tough match. But then we have the Champions League against Porto too. So this February is going to be a big one. Real quick as we wrap up, which has been an awesome live, and I thank everybody who's joining, all the great questions, comments, but mostly you too as well, Georg, for being such a great guest and joining me. But how do you think, what are your feelings for how Juventus will fare during this challenging February?
I think the draw was kind to us in the Champions League because it could have been a tougher opponent. We can't discard Porto, obviously, because a few years ago when we reached the final, we played them, and they were a tough opposition to play against. Obviously, this is now a new Porto side. It's not the condensed schedule that is really the issue. It's the quality of the opponents that we're set to face. And I think we're lucky in the sense that we're facing Roma now with the whole unrest that there seems to be in the camp. The same with Napoli as well, because lots of rumors going around there. The Inter match will be huge, obviously, getting to the final. I think it's important to start this month off well with wins because we're carrying lots of momentum from January, and keeping it going through February will really make or break how we might end up, because the Milan teams really don't look like dropping points as of yet. Milan have a very winnable game today against Crotone. They always start 1-0 up, given a penalty from Kessie. So They're always starting games 1-0 up, but other than that, I feel that this month will really tell how we will fare at the end when we look back at May. So it's a
Yeah,
crucial month.
it is. It absolutely is. So I think honestly they're all crucial now remaining based on how we performed at the start. Those drop points, the draws, the ones we had in the bag, you think back to these matches. Atalanta was a tough match, so you don't feel so bad about that one. Lazio we literally had until the very, very end, which we all know the scenario, how that played out. And then we have Crotone. We have that loss against Fiorentina, which was just incredible to me to fathom. So I think with those matches, we've literally made all these remaining months crucial. But after this month of January, when we think about the winter break and going into January and how nervous, it was a nerve-wracking feeling knowing we had to go through relatively unscathed, and we pretty much did. So the team is no doubt better prepared now going into months like these and going down to the crunch time. I feel confident in the club. I think we can make this push. I think things are starting to come together, and Pirlo's starting to have the actual roster at his disposal, which is good, which is something he's battled. So, we talk about no preseason. You talk about injuries. You talk about COVID. Pirlo's faced it all. Everything seems to be coming back together, knock on wood. Everything seems to be coming back together now at the right time. I got a good feeling about this team. I think we're prepared no matter what. So let's put our best foot forward. Let's have faith in the guys, and let's see what they can do, and kick us off with Roma today. So again, thank you, Georg. Alice coming in saying
Thank
great
you for having
pre-match
me. It's been an
live, guys.
honor.
Ken, gracias, Georg, for joining, and Abdul saying great job, guys, and congrats on your debut, Georg. Georg, I know you were nervous about it. You did a fantastic job, my friend. Thanks again.
Thank you.
I'm definitely going to invite you back on. I've had a great time with you. Thank you to everybody that joined and had questions and comments in. You guys are amazing. Please like the video, share it, retweet on Twitter. I'm having a blast and opening up these pre-match lives to more Juventini, ones that I can't get on the podcast, just to keep this community growing and whatnot. So I love seeing the support for Georg as well, joining in. Thank you, everybody. And of course, enjoy match day. Let's enjoy this match, which is sure to be entertaining. And hopefully we can all celebrate with another victory. And I, of course, will be back for another post-match podcast, and it will be live again tomorrow, live at 5. As always, that's what we like around here at All UVcast, live at 5. Ciao tutti. Enjoy the match. As always, Forza Juve fino alla fine. Ciao.